Hello everyone and welcome back to Beyond the Words, Psychodynamics that coaches can actually use. It is lovely to have you here. I'm delighted you have joined me for today's session. So, last time we explored the recoil, and importantly we defined it as any pulling back in the relational space. Now, this isn't necessarily avert emotion, it's not necessarily a big vulnerable moment, it's just that subtle sense of distance. You know when you feel there's a shift in the field, that the client's stepping back internally? That's what we're talking about there with the recoil. Now today we're looking at what often happens next. So this is the soft reapproach, the settling, the okay, I'm here again. It's what we can call the return. And like most relational shifts, it's really dramatic, but it's incredibly meaningful. So what does the return actually look like? And because it's subtle, coaches, we can often miss it. So a return might look like the client arriving more at ease than last time. Maybe the tension you felt in the last session simply evaporated. They might make more eye contact. Their tone is warmer, maybe less defended. And they seem more open to the work without pushing or rushing. It can feel like the session feels a bit smoother, more connected. And the client is willing to settle into the space again. There might be some other key points that we notice. Maybe the client shows up on time again. They're less abrupt. They're less task focused. Maybe their agenda feels more grounded, less avoidant. It's not this kind of big, I'm back moment. It's not that at all. It's more like the relational air temperature rises by a few degrees. And what they're communicating, whether this is consciously or not, is I feel a bit safer again. I feel a bit more safe to be here. So why does the return happen from a psychodynamic perspective? So there are several reasons why this has happened. It can be that the client is re-regulated internally. So whatever was stirred, consciously or unconsciously, it's settled. They're back in a place where the connection feels safer. It can be as well that the relationship has passed a small test. Often recoils are little experiments. Can I pull away and still be held in mind? Now, your steadiness creates these conditions for the return to the work. Maybe the shame, anxiety, self-protection spike, it softened. Even if the client didn't get overly emotional, something internally may have felt exposed or too close, and the return signals that the activation has eased. It might be as well that the client is re-engaging with the relational work. Now, this is important. A recall doesn't break the relationship, it activates it. And the return is part of that activation cycle settling. So it's not that you've done anything wrong, and it's not that something's broken, it's just part of the dynamics that are happening between the coach and the client. Now, this can affect their attachment pattern. Some are going to return lightly, some are going to return cautiously, some return with humour, some return with a burst of productivity, and some, well, they return as if nothing had happened. And every version will tell you something about their relational history. Now, what does the return stir in us as coaches? Well, we feel the return in our bodies and our behaviour too. And common responses can include relief, warmth, a sense of, aha, we're back in the room together. There might be subtle uncertainty going on for us. Do I say anything? Do I leave it? What do I do? Maybe for us there's a desire to keep things light so that the client doesn't retreat again. Or sometimes we might want to dive straight back into depth. All normal, and it's all part of the relational dance, the dynamics that are happening between us. The key is noticing our own counter response so that it doesn't unconsciously steer the session. We don't want our stuff getting in the way of what's going on with the client. So how do we meet the return with skill? Well, first of all, we're not going to make it a thing. We don't need to spotlight it. It needs steadiness. We meet the client as they arrive. And we let the space breathe before we name anything. Because if we name the shift too fast, it can feel incredibly intrusive. So give a few minutes for the relational field to settle. Now, if appropriate, and I do say if appropriate because it might not be, offer a gentle relational observation. Maybe something simple like, feels a little easier between us today. How are you finding it being here? Key to note, this isn't an analysis, it's an invitation. And only say this if you feel that it's appropriate to do so, and that it's in service of the client, not you wanting to dig something up over again. Follow today's energy, not last week's or last session's. Do not go fishing for the recoil. Don't even reference it unless the client does. The return is now the material, not retrospective material. Hold a tone of warm normality as well. No overwarmth, no compensating, just quiet, grounded presence. Because this is what helps the client trust the space again. Now, if the time is right, you might want to support some integration here. So later in the session, clearly not first off, you might say, what did last week bring up for you afterwards? Again, invitational, not interpretive. And this can help reduce future recall or return cycles. Now, sometimes what looks like re-engagement is actually a relational test. So the return becomes a test. And this might sound like, I'm not sure last week was useful. Should we change track? Or I think I was overthinking things. Or it might be in things like, they push small boundaries. Maybe they shift tone to see how you respond. And they're checking whether you hold firm or you wobble. This isn't opposition. It's, can I trust this relationship when I'm not fully in control? And meeting that with steadiness, well, that's the work. So what's the coach's task in the return? If we kind of come down to brass tacks, our role is to meet the client where they are today, bring warmth. I'm not saying be cold and frosty, bring warmth, just don't overdo it. Let the reconnection unfold naturally. Notice, but don't chase the previous dynamic. That's what happened before. We're not there, we're today, now. We're going to allow trust to rebuild through consistency. And we're going to stay relationally present, not analytical. So whilst I love all this theory stuff, relationship is the key. If you don't have a good relationship with your client, you can't coach them. So return isn't something to manage, it's something that the client is bringing us, and it's there for us to work with it. So to close, the return, well, it's a moment that the client re-enters the relational space after they've pulled away. Even if the last session, the recall was quiet, subtle, or we didn't even speak about it. It's not something to fix. We don't need to go in with our great big toolbox looking to fix it. Or to talk about it dramatically. We're not making it a thing. It's part of the rhythm of working at depth. And when we meet it with steadiness, the client learns it's safe to leave and it's safe to come back. So as we finish today's LinkedIn Live, what I would encourage you to reflect on is, think of a time that a client pulled back from you, subtly or clearly, and then returned. What helped that connection? And what might you do differently now? So I hope you've found some benefit in that. I hope you've enjoyed our little psychodynamic moment today. I shall be back next week for another dipping our toe in the water. If you've enjoyed this, there's my podcast, The Dynamics of Everyday Life, comes out every Wednesday for some more psychodynamic thinking. And I have my on-demand course, Psychodynamic Nuggets now, and there's Essential Psychodynamics for Coaches? No, Essential Psychodynamics for Coaches. We start again in January. So if you're interested in any of those, drop me a message and look forward to talking to you soon. Take care, everyone.